Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 9 or 8, technically. It's a rally at the Vancouver Art Gallery on this wonderful, beautiful day, December 3rd, 2021. The United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And so they're all live down at the Art Gallery in Vancouver, BC. And they're going to have speakers. It's going to be fantastic and amazing. And I'm just going to open with a video. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Chantel. I'm the board of directors for BCEdAccess. And I am doing the Zoom tech hosting from the unceded stolen lands of the Nanaimo First Nation. I am a parent with ADHD who has 2 children with some different diagnoses, and we've been in this journey for over 10 years now. And I'm super excited for today and hearing some great speakers. So I'm not going to talk very much. I'm going to put my video on, and then we're going to go live to the art gallery. Okay, let me see if I get this right. Hey everyone, turns out I didn't do it right with the video, but you heard the song, you heard the music, you heard the words, you saw the words, and these are some great words from a great band, and I hope we don't get sued for playing that song. On here, we are not making any money off this, so just wanted you to know that this is a great song and video to start off with. And we're going to go now live to Tracy Humphreys, who is the chair and executive director of BCEdAccess. And you're going to have to unmute the phone or the device that is sharing this here. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to, oh, no, we've got it. We've got it. We just need to unmute the, we just need sound. We just need sound. So you need to unmute the other.
No more atmospheric rivers.
There we go.
Things are looking up for us today. My name is Tracy Humphreys, and I'm the founder, chair, and executive director of BCEdAccess. My pronouns are she and her. And for those of you who need a visual description, I am a middle-aged white woman with long red hair. Nicole Kaler, I dyed my hair for you because you were wondering where my red was. So it's red today. Wearing a long black coat. I'm standing in front of a microphone on a stand. I have glasses. I don't know what I missed, but that's what I look like. And I'm here. And we're all gathered today on the stolen lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And I wanted to let you know that I did contact all three of those First Nations. I was able to get in touch with the Musqueam First Nation. Of course, it was really short notice, and so they weren't able to come and connect. And I didn't manage to get a hold of the other two nations. And I just wanted to talk about that because as a settler, the issue with that is because I haven't built that relationship with different Indigenous groups, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit around BC. You know, so that as the chair and executive director of a provincial organization is my responsibility, and I haven't done that relationship building. And so that's, you know, we're committed to doing that. I'm committed to building those relationships. And that's the conversation I had with the Musqueam First Nation, is that this was just to reach out, but we need to start building those relationships together and getting to know each other so that we can support their ask. And, you know, I read something on Twitter that was posted by Gabriel George, who is from the Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. And Gabriel said that their nation has no fluent speakers of the language and that this loss is due to residential schools. So education, you know, most of us know at this point, is a colonial project, right? And it's designed to exclude. It's designed to exclude all kinds of people. And removing people from their home communities continues to disconnect Indigenous people from their language and culture. It continues today. So it's not just residential schools. It's what is happening in schools today, and people who live in northern communities and have to come to the city for healthcare, for education, for whatever reason. It's cutting them off from their community, their language, and their culture. And I don't know which way you all came in today, but on the other side of the art gallery here, there is a memorial for the children who have been rediscovered, I guess, at residential schools across Canada. And it's really moving. And I didn't wear my t-shirt because it's kind of cold and I wore a sweater, but this t-shirt here was made by Carrie Newman, who is a First Nations artist who lives in my neighborhood, actually. And this was way back when they had first discovered 215 graves. And we are now, I believe it's over 8,000, which is, you know, it's not a shock because First Nations people, they told us that those children were there. They have been telling us for years. And we need to listen as settlers, as Canadians. And, you know, it used to be a big topic in the summer. And nobody's talking about it anymore except for Indigenous people. And that needs to change because there's no accountability that's happening around that. And there's no action. And so I just wanted to call attention to that. And I also wanted to show you my Moosehide campaign pin. During our conference in September, the Moosehide campaign came and spoke. And I just wanted to tell you the pins are available over there. This is a piece of Moosehide. And it signifies your commitment to honor, respect, and protect the women and children in your life, and to work together with other men and boys to end violence against women and children. So if you wear this pin, that's what you're there to spread and talk about. All right. So, yeah, and I also want to talk about just education. So, Lekwungen, I'm from over on the island, and the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, that land there was stolen from them, even though they are still there and have always been there. But there was a Lekwungen elder who spoke about how teachings were passed to her as a child and how they knew the children. And they always had someone to come alongside the children when they were learning so they didn't get lost. And this is what we talk about today when we say how important it is that relationship comes first for children in education, in all other systems when they need services and support and learning. Children and youth are faced with barriers to learning. That relationship is critical. So what brings me here today? I am disabled, and today is the International Day for Persons with Disabilities. And we're here to call for disability rights. So I have a lot of identities. I'm disabled, I'm bisexual. The one that brings me here is that I'm a parent of disabled children. And I have 3 kids. And I forgot to wear my pin, but I'm also that parent. I'm the one who goes and makes the complaints and raises noise and gets out there. And BCEdAccess, we're all parents of children and youth with disabilities for barriers to learning, and we fight for equitable access to education. And we support each other. We share information about advocacy and human rights. And I'm sorry I'm reading from this, but I did not have time to memorize anything. And so we're here today because disability rights are human rights. And for far too long, disabled children, youth, and adults have been waiting to realize our human rights in education and in other systems. And we're here to call, well, access delayed is access denied. We are here to call on the government to immediately enact the human rights of disabled people of all ages. So are we here to talk about hubs and MCFD? That is a question I've gotten a lot. Well, yeah, kind of. It will come up for sure. But we have to stop letting government push us from single issue to single issue. We have to stop letting them pit us against each other as families. Access is about everything. It's about childcare. It's about school. It's about MCFD funding for supports and services. It's about health care. It's about mental health. It's about housing for adults who get $375 a month as a housing allowance. How can you live on that anywhere in this province? So we have some amazing speakers today. The majority of them are disabled people like me. And we also have a game going on. It's over there, where you can learn about the barriers to access that disabled people experience. So I encourage you to go and check it out. Just a little housekeeping here, so don't forget to look at our sandwich boards. This one here, Samantha, that's my daughter. She wanted to share her story. These are the experiences of real people. They're real stories. There are accessible washrooms in the Pacific Center between American Eagle Outfitters and Lush. Pacific Center is that away. You can ask at the table if you need some help and directions. Kind of forgot to find that access person, so we maybe need to pull a volunteer over there to help with that. And we weren't able to get an in-person ASL interpreter, and I'm sorry, short notice, but we're broadcasting this live on Facebook. Say hello to the people who are watching live. So there is an ASL interpreter and there are captions on the Facebook Live broadcast. So if you need access to that, they can come and watch here if they want, or maybe find someone who has, you know, fancy data on their phone and watch together. And as I said before, if you want to broadcast on your own Facebook Live or go find that and share it around, be hugely appreciated. Please take pictures, post it on your social media, let people know that we are here. So I got so many messages from people who wish they could be here today from all over the province. Dawson Creek, Williams Lake, Prince Rupert, Burns Lake, Vancouver Island, Kelowna, Cranbrook, Barrier, and more. And people right here in Metro Vancouver too, because access to advocacy is another barrier. It's not easy for disabled people and their families to come out to something like this. There are so many things that get in the way. So I wanted to share some words from Dildeep, who says, she said, "Hi, Tracy. Speaking of barriers to access to education, our school district decided to change my son's support worker, and I have to organize an urgent meeting to train her, which is happening tomorrow at 10 a.m. Sorry, I won't be able to make it." I have been going through mental health issues, trying to juggle my full-time job and school advocacy in addition to everything else we have to do. I am an anxious wreck. School advocacy is a full-time job in itself. And next year, my autistic daughter will start kindergarten. I don't even know come next year how I will advocate for both of my disabled kids, work, and keep it together. Best wishes for tomorrow. Big thank you to your team for being our voice. And then there's the families the government will never hear from, will never hear from, because they're in crisis and they're just getting through the day. They don't have it in them to reach out. And then the kids who are in care, who don't have that family support, who don't have anyone to speak up for them. The disabled adults who are just trying to decide between rent, medication, or food every month. They don't have time to fight for disability rights, but they care about it. And the People First movement has long been at the forefront of the disability rights movement. They led the push to get out of institutions and the move to inclusive education, among other things. So we, as parents, all need to be grateful to the People First movement for paving the way for our kids. And I want to introduce you, I'm so happy to introduce you to Joanne Gauthier, who is an amazing leader and person and the president of BC People First. Wow, look at this. This is awesome, guys. Yes, it's so great to see you all. Woo! It is my honor to be here. It's been my dream to fight right there. We all got our disability right. Yes! And I need way up my feet, so I hope I don't go from here to there back here. I just want to say, thank you for having me here. Yes, and I want to say, somebody things that we need to fight for. One is schooling. It's very important to have the right to go to school, to go to college, to university. How we want you guys, we got our own dreams like everybody else. And to me, school wasn't great for me. Grade 1, grade 2. Because at the time, I have very many big problems. I didn't walk well. I didn't talk well. I didn't learn fast, as most people, most kids. So what they did is, way back, the big TV boxes, they cut one piece of it, and they put my desk in there. So that the other kids didn't have to look at me. To me, that's not right. We should be a part of the class, right? And I never ever forget that. When we went to fields, field trips. Nobody wanted to walk with me. So I had to walk by myself. No! We need to be together. The people should know we have to be this way. Right? And to me, we need to step for who we are. The other thing I want to speak as is how people say, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do this. Right? What about? Right? No, like, I want to get married. Oh, yeah, I go back a bit. I want to walk. I want to talk as best as I can. I'm walking. I'm talking. But when I met this guy, I didn't want him, but he keeps following me. Anyway, we went out. That was like 35 years ago. I got married. I have two beautiful girls. There's nothing wrong with them. People say, oh, what do you do when you have a baby? Are you going to get up for adoption? No. When you have a kid, you want to love it. Where is it? Right? Yes, so I did. My oldest one is 31 years old. She is a senior major of the Savon in the county. I got my youngest one is 27. She's married. I got a 15-month-old grandson. So who says he can't do it? And we have to keep on fighting. We never, you know what? We never ever going to stop. Never get up. And the other thing I want to fight for is for housing. We need to have people have the right place to live and not so high. Vancouver is so high. They keep building up these fancy places. Nobody can afford it. There are places buildings around every city here. What can they fix up and make apartments? I'm very lucky. I was in a place that my husband and I were living. He could get into the kitchen. He couldn't go into the bathroom. No, we got it. But I want to fight for everybody else. I do. And I know there's many other speakers, so I'm going to clap for them. But please, never, ever get up. Fight for your rights. We are just as noble as anybody else. So thank you for listening to me. And wherever the power is, we will keep on fighting and never, ever get up. Thank you. So I think Joanne, hang on, get me out of here. I think Joanne's going to be in charge of every rally from now on because she's awesome. Thank you, Anne. I don't know what I'm doing here. And the one thing that Joanne didn't say, but it's a big, big piece of the People First movement, so I don't want to forget to say it, is nothing about us without us. So, remember that your children, those of you who are here for your children, remember they have a lot to say. They have a lot to contribute. Get them involved. Joanne and BC People First are really big on self-advocacy. They can help and support. They have a youth, I don't remember what it's called, a youth council. Starts at age 15. So if you have kids and they want to get involved in the People First movement, Joanne has some pamphlets. You can come over and grab some. Nothing about us without us, she said. It's so important. And your kids need to learn to self-advocate. Wherever possible, we need to stop talking about and for our kids. We need our kids to be talking about and for themselves where they can. So I'm just going to check and see if Ramona Shirt is here because I've got kind of an order in my brain for speaking, but I didn't see her yet. Ramona, are you here? Ramona going once, Ramona going twice. Okay. She may come. Are you here, Ramona? Yay, okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit and then bring you up. No, go ahead. You can come up here. So my introduction relates to you, so I didn't want to say it if you weren't here yet. Thanks for coming. I love the Mario, by the way. I'm kind of obsessed myself. Your name is Lucas. Nice to meet you, Lucas. Johnny, the Mario man. Okay, so since September, probably since a lot longer than that, but since September, parents have been going through a lot of stress. Here's what we've been dealing with. A new school year with a pandemic, but without the precautions or the flexibility of last year. That's number one. Changes to distributed learning, which is now known as online learning. Confusing, kind of all over the place, and, changing as it goes. Future changes to the Ministry of Children and Family Development's Children and Youth with Support Needs framework, which has been consuming so much time and energy for parents in the last just few weeks, really. It feels like it's been years, honestly. And the future move of childcare into the Ministry of Education, which maybe is not everyone's radar right now, but I've been talking about it for over a year because I'm kind of freaked out by how we integrate a segregated system with one that, albeit it has its problems, is a lot more inclusive. So, and we've been begging for change, haven't we? Like, as families, we've been begging for change. But the government's approach to change has been mostly traumatic for families. And decision makers don't seem to understand how these systems work. They're not talking to the people who work in the systems. They're not talking to the kids and the adults who are getting services through these systems. And parents, caregivers, adults, they don't feel heard. And in some cases, as I mentioned, government seems to be trying to pit families against each other. Maybe it's not intentional, but we're not going to let that happen. because the common thread is barriers to access. And that is on the government. They're responsible and they need to be held accountable. So now I'm inviting Ramona Shirt to speak. And they're a warrior parent who comes from a line of activist women. Their grandmother was the incredible Lillian Shirt, who made headlines setting up and staying in her teepee on Churchill Square in Edmonton back in the 60s to demand access to Indigenous rights in housing, education, and more. And it is fitting to be outside of an exhibit by Yoko Ono, because Ramona's grandmother is said to have had a conversation with Yoko and John at the time that she was camped out on the square and may have had some influence on his music. So welcome, Ramona. Please come up.
Thank you, Tracy. It's so nice to finally meet you. It's so nice to see everyone out here, I guess. I think it's fine. Yes. Okay, Tanse everyone, Nia Ramona Shirt, Treaty 6, Ochi Nia. I now reside on the stolen lands of Coquitlam First Nations, as well as the territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Kaikites, Musqueam, and Squamish First Nations. I have two sons. The older one isn't here with me today. This is our little cousin. But my older son has autism, and he hasn't had access to education since September. September 23rd is when I took my son out of school because it's not a good safe space for him. And the next day I dropped Johnny off at school. All the Every Child Matters spilled up all of the windows, and it just broke my heart. I'm gonna try. I'm a really emotional person. It's been so freaking hard out here. Oh. I suffer with severe anxiety, so I have a disability myself, so it makes it that much harder for me to advocate and communicate with everybody. I haven't had any respite, and I haven't had a break aside from today for my son since July, and he screams every day, all day, but I love him. Thank you. It's been really hard in BC. I moved from Alberta, where I had a full-time job. I had respite, I had childcare, and I moved to British Columbia for a better life for my family, because I have 3 generations on my mom's side that are residential school survivors, and my father's a 60 scoop survivor. So there's a lot of trauma in my family, and I needed to be somewhere for myself. But since moving here, I hadn't had a job because of the childcare wait list. I haven't been able to safely send my son to school. I haven't had any respite. And I might, like, the sign right here just screams it. Having a child with a disability shouldn't be a ticket to poverty. Like, that's what it is. And that's, now that without my son in school, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I just wish that our basic human rights were met, you know? Like, we shouldn't have to all stand out here to fight for our children to be active members of our communities and of our society. Yeah.
Just comments from the audience, just asking if there was any government here.
Sorry, guys.
Why there was no government here, as well as that there were some government at the Victoria rally, but that's Victoria, that's not Access for All.
Thank you, Ramona. I really appreciate it. You know, this is the story that I can't tell. I can't speak to that. I can't speak about being an Indigenous mom, a disabled Indigenous mom, you know, and someone who just wants to live their life, you know, and have their kids be safe, welcomed, included, happy, you know, and for you to have a job, be able to go to work because you know your kids are being well cared for. You know, it's crap. I don't know how else to put it, but I don't see how anyone in these systems sees it as acceptable for your family. And I never understand why there isn't a focus on wrapping around families and supporting them and making things better. You know, these ministries that serve our kids and our families, they don't talk to each other. Did you know that? They don't talk to each other. It's ridiculous. Right, Terry? Even in the Ministry of Education, there are different departments that don't talk to each other, right? It's unreal. I could not believe it. You know, I talk to inclusive education a lot. Truly, the people in that space in the Ministry of Education, they're so on board. There are no questions in that department about how things should change. But they have to talk to other people. They have to talk to the rest of the ministry. They have to talk to the minister and the deputy minister and the assistant deputy minister. They all need to get on the same page and they need to take action. So, you know, I also heard a lot from people who would like to have spoken, but they don't feel safe speaking because they're worried about retaliation for their kids in different systems, retaliation from the Ministry of Children and Families, retaliation from education, retaliation from, losing my thread, health, yeah, and lots of other systems, retaliation for adults and their funding. If they speak out, they might be concerned about what's going to happen to their funding. And so I really appreciate it when adults who are, you know, are willing to come forward, adult self-advocates, disabled people, and they can share their own perspective because they're elevating the voices of other people who can't do the same because it's not safe. And so I want to invite Vanessa Mendoza, and I hope I pronounced that right, Vanessa. I'm sorry. I should have asked beforehand. And Vanessa is a member of BC People First. And I can't say a lot about Vanessa, unfortunately, because I didn't get a chance to get to know her. So I don't know her background, but maybe she'll tell you. And we're going to get Glenn Murray to help get the mic set up for you. Thanks, Vanessa. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Hi, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for coming out today. My name is Vanessa Mendoza. I'm a self-advocate for community living, and I'm also a BCPF member. A little background on myself first before I read my speech. I was born with spina bifida, and so having spina bifida, I'm paralyzed from the waist down, which meant that obviously I cannot walk, as I'm sure most people with my condition can. But I also have hydrocephalus, which is a neurological condition that I have a shunt in my it's called left VP shunt. And so when I was born, I was actually told I was not going to live past, I believe, the age of 10. And 30 years later, here I am, ladies and gentlemen. And that's thanks to support of friends and family and organizations I work for, that have helped me along my way. So I'm going to be reading a little speech to you today about accessibility in both the education and housing sectors, I guess you could call it. So it's very important for education to be accessible for people with disabilities, because not all resources are available, such as special needs teachers and accessibility to facilities. This is why more facilities should be made available so as people with limitations have an equal opportunity to access education. This also applies to housing. Due to limited disabled housing, the wait for something to come available can take years. Sorry. Sorry, guys, I lost myself here. Such things as elevators and ground floor units are not accessible. And washroom spaces are limited, which means a lot of people such as myself either have to wait or accept unsuitable accommodations. This is why more attention needs to be paid to people with disabilities. Thank you. I'm too short. How's that? Sound good? Thank you, Vanessa. That was awesome. When you were talking about like access, physical spaces, I'm forever blown away when we talk about schools, that schools are not accessible to all people, just not by default. How is that possibly okay in 2021? How is it okay that a wheelchair user can't play on the playground at the school that is right behind my house? And there is a child who is a wheelchair user. They have 3 playgrounds at that school, 3. Not a single one of them is accessible. Right. Maybe if the school was hosting the 2010 Olympics, it would be accessible. You're right. But it's not just children who need access. There are disabled teachers. There are disabled education assistants, disabled principals, disabled parents, disabled grandparents, community members who want to come and play with their kids on those playgrounds. And that's just one thing. And you go inside a school and there's 2 floors and no elevator. The list goes on, and it's something that I can't believe, it's not even on their radar to do this work. There is a playground equipment fund, which is so much better than there was nothing for 10, 20, I don't even know how long, 10 years or so, at least 20 years. There was no funding for anything. The playground equipment fund, initially, they allowed half of the playgrounds, new playgrounds being built, to not be accessible. That was ridiculous. And there were lots of advocates, BCEdAccess and others, who pushed against that. And after the first year, they changed it. So now all the new playgrounds built with that fund must be accessible, which is great. But I have to say their version of accessibility isn't always totally accessible. There are still problems even with those playgrounds being built. So it's a matter, again, of not talking to the people who are impacted. Nothing about us without us. So I have an impromptu speaker who's put their hand up. They're interested in coming up and saying a few words. And I'm going to slot him in. His name is Luke. And I'm sorry, I just assumed pronouns there, and I apologize. So you can correct me if you like. But please, come on up. Say whatever you want to say. Thank you so much. Hello. I am 14. 9. I'm grade 9. Me and my sibling, Kai, both have disabilities, and I don't want autism funding going away. Actually, there's this one boy at school. I'm not going to say his name or anything because my mom doesn't want me to, but he would bully me, and I don't feel safe there anymore. So I'm being at home for now. The school is not set up for me either. They're just at the start of the school year. They would just keep me in a little room, and all they would have was a computer, and I would just sit there with someone and do boring stuff, like not stuff I would want to do. I wouldn't get to socialize with anyone. Thank you. Oh, thanks, Ben. Wow. I'm all teary-eyed now. Luke, at 14, that's incredibly brave to get up and say those words. And it is not right that you're excluded like that. And it's not right, and I don't call it bullying anymore myself. I call it oppression. Because it is not about, fights on the playground. It's usually about protected identities. It's usually about being disabled, It's about ableism. It's about racism. It's about homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia. You know, all of those things, that's where bullying comes from. It is not a cute little word. It is ugly, and it needs to be addressed differently in the education system, because when I was your age, Luke, I was bullied. And it wasn't acceptable then, and nothing has changed. And it makes me angry, so angry, that I don't even know, you know, if your mom sent me a message and said, it's happening, what should I do? I don't have a good answer for her. I do not know what the process is in the education system. Every school district has a different way of dealing with it, and most of them deal with it by not dealing with it. It needs to change. We need some action. So I want to talk about Kathy Camley. She's been my long-term mentor, and she shepherded BCEdAccess through the early days when we were a Facebook group that was growing, and then things kind of imploded in my personal life, and I had to step away for about 9 months. Kathy took the reins, and she's a long-term advocate. She used to be the leader of the Learning Disabilities Association. I want to say of BC, might have been just part of BC, but certainly a huge advocate who was affecting change in education long time ago in inclusive education. So she really wanted to come, but she couldn't make it, and so I'm sharing her words here. So in 1989, Ministerial Order 150, the Special Needs Student Order, was added to the School Act. And this order provides the legal basis for inclusion, which the Ministry of Education defines as a value system which holds that all students are entitled to equitable access to learning and the pursuit of excellence in all aspects of their education. This policy reflects the rights guaranteed in both Section 15 provincial governments to bring their laws into line with the equality rights the Charter guarantees. And the policy
we're losing
reflects
sound.
the BC Human Rights
there we go.
Act.
Perfect.
Equitable access is the law. It is not a goal achieved in some distant future. These laws apply to all government action, meaning the provincial legislature, including their ministries, and to everything done under their authority, including school boards and independent school authorities. It has been 32 years since that ministerial order came into effect. Is there any school district that can claim that all their students, abled and disabled, have equitable access to learning and the pursuit of excellence in all aspects of their education? I can tell you, no, they cannot. The time has come to abide by the law. No more promises. Obey the law. So, you can see why Kathy's my mentor. She sets me straight. Lema Al-Safin. I'm doing my best. I met Lema, like most of the BCEdAccess families, online in our private parent Facebook group. And I just met her last week in person, and she's exactly who I expected her to be. And she's a fiery character. And she is also incredibly generous in supporting other families who are new to walking the path of advocacy. And so, Lema, please come and speak.
Hi, my name is Lama Al-Safin, and thank you, Tracy, for the introduction. I'm a parent of a child on the autism spectrum. You hear me? Hold it. Hi, my name is Lana Hostafet. I'm a parent of a child on autism spectrum and an advocate for neurodiverse community. I'm here to say that all kids deserve to have an access to education. No kids should be left behind because of disability. Neurodiverse students struggle at school settings because of shortage of support hours due to the lack of funds, union issues that put seniority above the needs and support compatibility. Early intervention is the key word to open the doors for neurodiverse kids to access education. Sorry, I'm wearing the gloves. Early intervention won't be accessible without funds. The funds that should be for all and all at once. Autism community was able to access early intervention program for the past 20 years because of autism funding. MCFD announced the end of the successful, reliable model of autism funding and replaced it with a hub model without consulting with the experts. The experts who are parents, caregivers, service providers, and specialists. Without funded early intervention programs, our schools will be flooded with neurodiverse kids who are not yet ready to adapt in school settings. They will be set up for failure. This is not acceptable. I'm here to say, Mr. Dean, you have to stop, listen, and consult with us, the experts. Kids with disabilities deserve equitable access to education that won't be applicable without the proper support and funds. And nothing about us without us. Thank you.
I think it might be okay. Yeah, I think lemons. Look at that. Someday I'll figure it out. I have a huge lack of skill with anything physical or technical. And, you know, people like Bobby Taylor here, she takes care of me. She takes care of us in BCEdAccess in all technical aspects. She's incredible. Massive multitasker. We have amazing volunteers at BCEdAccess. And, you know, I was going to kind of save it for the end, but I'm going to talk a little bit because I talked about Bobby. I want to talk about Cindy Daglish, Anne Whitmore, and Chantel Morvay Adams, who is on the other side doing the live streaming on Facebook. And she's handling all of that, all the tech on that, and just the planning. That's been the core team. They've been incredible. And this has been such a whirlwind to do 8 days. And it was actually 9 days. It was hilarious. We set it up. We called it 8 days of action for access. We're like, that flows so nicely. And then we counted and it was 9 days. So we made the first day, day 0. So there you go. It was great. It worked out fine. But so today is day 8. Today is the International Day for Persons with Disabilities. Just as a reminder, if you forgot why we're here today. So, and it's incredibly important that we don't forget why we're here today. And I'm going to find myself because I switched some speakers around, so now I got to figure out what I was going to say next. Okay, so I'm going to introduce another self-advocate who has agreed to speak today, and I'm so grateful. They spoke at our conference in September, along with Joanne, the president of BC People First. And I know that what they said really, really resonated with a lot of people. They had a lot of important things to say. And I'm really glad that they were able to come out today as well. I mean, I'm so, I just want to say a big thanks to all of the speakers, because literally, I think we asked most of them like 2 days ago, yesterday, maybe last week, some of them got a whole week's notice. So I'm so appreciative to everyone who came out. And I want to introduce you to Margot Wask, who's going to come and speak now. Thank you for coming.
Hello. I am Margot Wask, and I'm here with BC People First. I am openly disabled. I'm an autistic self-taught artist and designer. I design and sell mostly neurodiversity and autistic pride merchandise, which is really important and empowering for so many people, including myself. I'm an activist and I'm an advocate. Identifying as disabled versus person with disabilities is a personal choice. It is never anyone else's place to dictate how I identify or ask me to change the language that I am using. I am not differently abled, and I do not have diverse abilities. To insinuate that my abilities are different or diverse is incredibly offensive. I still have my strengths and weaknesses, but it's important for me to clarify that my abilities are not diverse. My abilities are limited, and I need additional support. I am struggling. Personally, choosing to not use the word disabled contributes to the erasure and lack of resources that I and many others are fighting so hard for. My disability is not an accessory. Personally, choosing, I am joining all of you here today to stand united in the core belief and human right that disabled children and adults deserve and require so much more. Asking, begging, and pleading for the very minimum 4 years is exhausting. We need to be heard. Action needs to be taken quick. Remember, autistic children become autistic adults. Include this in all of the conversations when it comes to autism funding. As a child with learning disabilities growing up in Vancouver, I was often bullied, ostracized, and left out of things that I should have been integrated into. Instead, I was pulled out of my class in front of the other students who would laugh and belittle me while I went off to the learning assistance classroom. There, I would have very flawed support. I would then be put back in the classroom to endure more harmful behavior from my peers. I was confused, depressed, and anxious. My mom would always say that I was falling through the cracks of the system. Moving around from school to school was traumatizing. I never ended up graduating from high school and instead got my GED. Now, as an adult, I would love the opportunity to take graphic design courses to enhance the skills I already have gained, but the barriers are too overwhelming. First off, I would have to take out a loan. I'm not in the position to take on any debt. Secondly, there's fluorescent lighting, which is incredibly debilitating for me. Thirdly, I would have to spend more money to prove that I have attention deficit disorder, dyscalculia, which diagnoses were on a piece of paper that got lost through the years, on top of my autism diagnosis. These evaluations are not free. For an adult autism diagnosis, it can be very expensive. Some assessments are around $2,500. Without this glorified piece of paper, many adults are unable to access PWD, which also requires a lot of focus, determination, and hoops to jump through, just to be able to apply. Applying doesn't even guarantee that you will be approved either. If the government is not providing our youth with the strength and resources to have a fulfilling future, we are failing them. If the government is not providing adults with additional resources, we are also being failed. On top of these concerns, if someone like myself does not choose a path of being employed by someone else, but has goals for self-employment, the resources are limited there as well. Did you know that BC Disability Employment Month does not even include disabled people who are self-employed? We are never empowered. Oftentimes the narrative is, how can able-bodied, allistic people in positions of power utilize disabled people for their own benefit? If we don't start fixing things like removing isolation rooms and cease ostracizing students, we will always be at the mercy of someone who does not have our best interests at heart. We will not be able to contribute in our own way when there are people who are so quick to have us morph into their idea of what a perfect, behaviorally modified young person needs to be. I addressed many of my concerns at the 2022 provincial budget consultation, and based on their report, many of the topics that BC People First and I spoke about were not even addressed. We simply are not empowered to be independent. Our disabilities are often ignored. We deserve adequate treatment, we deserve accommodations, we deserve help, and we deserve financial assistance. Listen to us, make changes, provide funding. I'm never going to stop fighting, and change needs to happen now. Thank you.
So many wonderful speakers, and here comes Tracy from the back.
I'm back. Sorry. I was talking to Richard over there with, he's with Omni and City TV. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate the interview. And Margot, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to watch it after because I couldn't listen while we were talking. I was going to say something nice about what you said, and I'm sure it was great, but I didn't hear it. I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. So, okay, checking where I'm at. You know, Anne Whitmore, she says that we should greet parents who are new to our Facebook group. You know, we should say, hi, welcome. Welcome to the group. Welcome to the team. Here's your helmet. Put it on. We're all going to run at this brick wall together, and eventually it's going to come down, I swear. So, you know, the brick wall is obviously the barriers to access. And people have been running at the brick wall for a really long time, and it's kind of like that water metaphor too, you know, eventually drip, 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 and you will break through. But we don't have that kind of time anymore, and that's why we're out in numbers today. And that's why this won't be the last day that we do this. This won't be the last time that we come up publicly. We talk in our groups, you know, we're on Facebook, we're in different social media spaces, and we talk, and we're basically in our bubble. And it's not that that isn't helpful. That support is necessary, and the sharing of knowledge is necessary, and the learning about the human rights is necessary. But we've got to get out of there and start talking to our friends and talking to our families and talking to the public and telling them that things are not good. You know, it hasn't been good for a long time. People generally think that disabled people are well cared for in British Columbia. They think things are pretty much fine. They don't understand, and they need to understand, and we need to talk about it. You know, disabled people are 20 to 25% of the population. Surely we all know people who are disabled. Everybody should care about this issue, and we need to raise it and get louder about it. That's how change happened in the past. That's how people were able to get out of institutions and live in the community and get into mainstream classrooms. And all of those things, they didn't get there because the government suddenly decided, oh, we should probably do that. They got there because they got out and made noise. Yes. So, someone who's been running at the brick wall for quite a long time now is Kathy McMillan of Dyslexia BC. And I'm looking for her. Kathy, come on up. So I'm going to let Kathy talk about it, but really she's done a lot of good work and she's had some impact. Yes. Go ahead. All right. Here's Kathy. I used to be a health and safety officer, so I'm going to wipe the mic before I talk a lot into it. But my hands are really cold, so it's going to take me a few minutes here. There we go. Okay. All right. Feel better. Sorry. Usually I start by saying, hello, my name is Kathy McMillan, and I am dyslexic. I was not diagnosed when I was young, but certainly every day, probably until about grade 4, my mom would go into the classroom. We moved provinces from Ontario to BC to Alberta, back to Ontario. So there were 4 or 5 different schools in there. I also have a December birthday. So every year my mom would say, can you hold her back? She's still not reading. My younger daughter, who's 3 years younger, can read grades above her. Can we hold her back? Can we do something? And the teachers would say, she's such a nice girl. She'll be just fine. You know, like I'd get married and somebody would take care of me and everything would be okay. But all my grandparents went to university. My parents went to university. And I wanted to go to university too. The teachers would say, it's okay to go to college. It's okay even if you don't go to college. They didn't really try to push me. I got really good grades in math. A lot of dyslexics are really good at math because they have that spatial reasoning. They might not remember how to spell the numbers, but they certainly know how to put them together. A dyslexic will learn numbers usually way before the alphabet because numbers mean something. 1, 2, 3. Letters don't mean anything. Look at an A. What does it mean? You have to memorize it. So along with dyslexia, there's a memory issue, usually with working memory. As they get remediated, which means someone is actually actively trying to teach them how to read the way they need to learn to read. Unfortunately, the schools don't use the methods that dyslexia needs in order to learn to read. If they do teach the kids to read, and I've kind of lost my track here, but anyways, you get my point. If you take a B, you turn it upside down, it becomes a P. Dyslexics do not see backwards. They have trouble remembering what that letter was. They see the shape and they go, oh, I know that shape. Is it a B, a Q, a D? That's what happens. So if they have to do that for every single letter, imagine how tired their brain gets by the time they end of the line. And do you think they can remember what they read in the first 3 words? No. So the other thing I want to point out is not all dyslexics are the same. There's a big push right now that's sort of in a saying that if we just switch instruction, we'll get them all. But there is such a thing as severe to profound dyslexia, and it is real. Those kids never read at grade level or even close to their intellect, and they do need accommodations and support and extra time and all those things. Unfortunately, a few years ago, maybe Terry remembers, the new funding model that was supposed to come out for education. In the ministry's diagrams, it basically said, like there was an arrow, these are the kids that don't get funding, which dyslexia is included in learning disabilities. They get told by districts, there is no funding, we cannot help you. And that went up on a board for everyone to look at. And as far as I know, the BCTF was the only one who stuck up for us. There was a case in BC. It came to light probably about, I want to say 2012. It finally ended, called the Moore case. So Rick Moore decided to take the ministry as well as the district that he was in, which was North Vancouver, to court. And he won against the district, but somehow the ministry slipped by. But as far as I'm concerned, the ministry is the bigger issue. They're the ones that are supposed to be showing us the way. They're the ones that actually make the rules. And they're the ones putting up that graph saying we don't get any help. So what have they done? They're now going to take funding away from autism? It doesn't seem right. As someone with a science degree, we talk a lot about being proactive. Just responding to needs is what you call being reactive. And that's not the way we want to go with disability remediation. Or can you imagine being reactive to cancer? Can you imagine being reactive to diabetes? No, it doesn't happen. So why do disabled kids have to have reactionary service to their education? It's just not right. Both my kids have been diagnosed with dyslexia. My youngest has severe dyslexia. She was diagnosed in grade 1. I had to fight for that diagnosis, and I paid for it. And guess what? I've paid 5 more times. She's in post-secondary. Every single time I went to get help with a psych ed, I was told some reason. But you can't go on in school without a psych ed. Sorry, I don't remember what your name is. Margot, yes. So the 3 learning disabilities are dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. I have dysgraphia. You can't read my writing. It sucks. When I was in grade 2, my teacher used to keep me in every day after school for about 3 weeks, and I would go home crying. My teacher made me write lines because of messy handwriting. Do you think that made me like school? No. Finally, my mom went to the teacher and took a page of my father's handwriting and said, you know, you're focusing on the wrong thing. This is a sample of my husband's handwriting. He has a PhD. Just, can you try to teach her how to read? Anyways, I'm rambling. I didn't really prepare. Hopefully you guys aren't noticing. Anyways, because I don't like to write, right? So anyways, I've been at this for probably my whole life, advocating for myself. I look back, I wasn't diagnosed. I think a couple times my mom said, I think you're dyslexic. By the time I got to university without a diagnosis, I used to sit in the front of the classroom and I'd look around and I'd see who was taking notes. And I'd saddle up and say, hey, if I can have your notes, because I really can't learn if I'm writing at the same time as I'm listening, I'll take you for a beer. Anyways, I had notes all the way through university and I got a BSc. My kids, however, have diagnosis and they go into university disability centers and get notes and whatever else they need. As much as people say that it changes once you get to college, no. My daughter said, she's at a new school right now, and they asked her, okay, well, what do you need for your exams? She said, well, I need my private room I've had my whole life, because she uses text-to-speech and speech-to-text. Who wants to sit beside a kid who's yelling at their computer? For one exam, she said, well, I don't need my speech-to-text for this one because it's multiple choice. I'm okay. So they took away her private room for all of her exams. So she phoned me in a panic. This was just yesterday. So the advocacy continues on, and I'm sure it will continue into her jobs because we've had a few adjustments already. So if you want to know anything about learning disabilities or how to advocate, please come to me. I'm Kathy McMillan with Dyslexia BC. Thank you.
Kathy, amazing as usual. You really get to the point. It's really funny when Kathy and I talk a lot together. And it's almost kind of the clash of the disabilities sometimes, because writing is not awesome for Cassie. Phones are not awesome for me. I've had to get over it, but I don't love being on the phone. You know, I'm autistic, I have ADHD, and being on the phone is a real struggle for me. You know, I will do almost anything to avoid it, but I love talking to Cassie because she has such deep insight. And, you know, she makes an effort on her side to text me because she knows that sometimes I'm not great at picking up the phone. So we balance it together, and we accommodate each other. Isn't that amazing? How hard is it? It's not that hard. So I'm bringing someone up impromptu here because she came over and I'm so happy to see her. This is my friend Karen. And Karen was, I don't even know how to tell the story. She was my daughter's principal at a small independent school. And you know how she ended up being a principal? Is because she came in for a temporary teaching position to get on the on-call list at our school. And our principal had left, and we were desperate, and we roped her right into it, and she said yes. We were so very fortunate. And I don't know if Karen knows what she wants to say, but I asked her if she wanted to speak because I know she could speak to a lot of things about inclusive education. And so, Karen, I'm going to see if I can find someone to lower the mic because I suspect you might need it down a little. Okay, yeah, come on up. Yeah, right. There we go. Oh, okay, sure. Okay. All right. Oh, all right. Hi, can you hear me? Awesome. Okay. First of all, I just want to thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Oh my God. I was the principal of a small school in Victoria. I had the honor and the privilege of being in that school. And the majority of the population of the students had some form of disability, mostly autistic students in the schools. I knew very little about autistic children, how to teach them, but my core value of being an educator is that every child, doesn't matter where you've been, where you're going, where you're coming from, every child has a right to an equal opportunity to become who the Creator has made them to be. And I'm not sure if it's just here in BC or like maybe it's in the rest of society, but as in our society today, I find it very, very sad and discriminatory, as you all know this on a daily basis. And before I go any further, I just want to hold my hand up to you parents and to you children every day who get up in the morning and have to go into this world that isn't accepting of anybody that is different, which is wrong. This society needs to learn to accept everybody. Doesn't matter the color or your challenges that you face in the world. Every person has a gift. Every person. There isn't one person on the face of this earth that does not have a gift. And as our society, we need to be patient to find every person's gift. That's so important in our society. We need to strive for that. And I'm finding that no matter how far, like if you've just found out that you have you're on the spectrum, or if you haven't, having those quote, how would you say it, those
the psychiatrists and the psychologists give us those labels so that we can get funding. That is wrong. That is so wrong. You should be able to access proper education. Teachers need to have that training opportunity to help all children to succeed. All children. And when we were at Elizabeth Buckley, we had the most outstanding, right, JC? The most outstanding programs. And it was the saddest time because our school was filled with students that had struggles on a daily basis. And I spent a lot of time as the principal talking with those parents and asking them, how can you help us to help your students? That should be all parents or all educators should be asking the parents, how can we help your child? Let's work as a team. We're a team. Mothers, fathers, aunts and uncles, all those people who live with a child with supposed disability. But you know what? What I found is I learned so much from the children and the parents about disabilities. And that's why I hold my hand up to you as parents. You deserve gold medals. You deserve you deserve a break. And if there is some way to get the government to change that process where they're taking the money away from you as parents and giving it to themselves, but yet they fail to ask, what is it that you need? How can we help as a province? How can we help as a school to make your child's life what it's supposed to be? Equal opportunity for everyone. Thank you so much for listening. And once again, I hold my hands to you, each and every one of you, and to Tracy for all your work. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. That was not a big hugger, but I gave Karen a big hug because I haven't seen her in a long, long time. And she's such an incredible person, such a warm presence. And she was so wonderful for the kids during a time that was really, really difficult at that school. The school did end up closing, mainly a funding issue and a staffing issue. It was difficult to find teachers. It's still difficult for schools to find teachers. I think it's gotten worse. There's a huge shortage. And so, it's always amazing to meet an educator like Karen and, to develop a real friendship. And I miss you. And I can't wait to see you knowing you're back in Victoria. That's so awesome. I'm so happy. So during the 8 days of Action for Access, we did lunch hour teach-ins. And the topics were access to rights, access to assessments, funding, services in rural and remote areas, supports, sports and play, and access to equity. And equity is about fairness and it's about justice. Equity does not mean necessarily that all students will obtain equal outcomes, but it does mean that the differences and the outcomes aren't related to their disability or to other protected characteristics like race or gender identity or many other protected characteristics. Because those are things that they can't control. And so that equity means that they have access to the same educational opportunities to excel, not just a baseline low level of expectations for every student, but a high level of high quality learning and
engagement, and experience. So equity means being on a level playing field in terms of advocacy too. Parents have the right to appeal decisions in schools that significantly impact their child's education, health, or safety. They also have those rights in other systems to advocate. But when a parent can't find resolution after following the whole complaints process, what happens then? What if the school district says, no, we're not going to give you what your child needs, and the school board upholds the decision of their staff? Then what happens? There isn't anywhere to go except for the Human Rights Tribunal, which is difficult, and you're going up against the school board's lawyers. They have ample funding to pay for that. And parents, even if they hire a lawyer, it's still just not the same machinery as they're going up against. It is not an equitable process. And so equitable access to accountability is needed. That accountability should lie with the provincial government. When things are not going well, they should recognize that and do something about it. When you can see that certain issues are systemic, like exclusion of children from classes. Kids can't go to school full time. That's embedded right now in ministerial orders, in legislation, in law. That's wrong. It goes counter to human rights. It needs to change. And there are lots of other systems where we have these same kind of barriers that they could do something about right now. And they need to take responsibility as a provincial government. So the reason I chose this rant at this particular time is because I'm going to introduce you to someone who's a good ranter. And she's been writing and sharing some very clear and direct advice on how to navigate different parts of the accountability system in education. Kim Block. Welcome, Kim. Everybody freezing? You jump up and down a little bit.
Hi, my name is Kim Block, and I'm a person who stutters. When my child was struggling in school, it was blamed on his behavior. Him not writing anything down was said that he was refusing to do his work due to his personality. He was punished by being sent out into the hall for 45 minutes to try again, or stand out in the hall, or being yelled at for not following the instructions. When assessments are not provided and diagnoses are delayed, children suffer. It's traumatizing for the child and the family. Meltdowns after school were heartbreaking while we waited and waited for an assessment. Kids can't wait. My child slipped through the cracks in the system, and it was me who had to pull him out. My child said to me one day that he thought school was abuse. When I told this to the professional that we were working with, he said, for a kid like my son, he's not that far off. I had to leave my employment because my child wasn't getting the support he needed, and dealing and supporting my son while he dealt with the abuse took a huge toll on our family. A diagnosis for ADHD and learning disability for written expression should not be a traumatizing process. The government doesn't want to spend $2,000 to $3,000 on an assessment, but lost me as an employee paying a lot more in taxes than the cost of an assessment. Even from a financial point of view, it doesn't make any sense. It's a pay now or pay heavily later. Kids cannot wait. Without a diagnosis, you don't understand the why. And that is really dangerous. Once we got a diagnosis, everything made sense. We could learn and provide supports that actually work. It is because of these two assessments that I was able to advocate for him in getting the targeted support that he needs to access his education. When people don't understand why children are behaving the way they are, they unnecessarily get blamed, and so do their parents. All relationships become strained. All these theories start to be formulated. It becomes a blame game. As a person who stutters, I can also personally speak to this, as stuttering gets blamed on every ridiculous thing we do or do not do. We don't breathe right. We don't chew our food right. As a child, I never understood why I was different, and therefore I had to guess. And as kids, we get wrong. We always think there is something wrong with us and it's our fault and that we aren't good enough. And we are the blame for causing the pain in the people we see around us. We never even think for a second that it is because of our genetics or something to do what is lacking in our environment or connected to the adults in our lives. Never. Kids take all the frowning faces, the looks of dismay, the energy of frustration and disappointment, and they soak all of it in without question. It becomes a part of them, a part of their identity and their self-concept. Assessments for children in schools are crucial. Kids cannot wait. Having trained teachers who are able to identify learning disabilities in those early years and for kids to be assessed is a human right. Schools should not be places of abuse for children with learning disabilities. If schools are not properly assessing children, they are disabling them. They are creating the barriers and enforcing those. Our kids have done nothing wrong, and yet our children take the failure of the system as their own. Disability is a social construct created and maintained by people. Living with a disability isn't nearly as challenging as dealing with the ableism. The Ministry of Education, with their chronic underfunding, sets up a system to fail. It sets up the teachers and the EAs and the children to fail. Discrimination all over this province in the education system is rampant and shameful. One may think, contact the Ministry of Education. They may not be aware of the situation. Oh, they know. In fact, they are ignoring me, and they are ignoring many other parents voicing their concerns about systemic issues. So, Ministry of Education, if you don't respond to our concerns, our emails, our phone calls, we will take to the streets and rally. Our children have a voice and they will be heard. The abuse of power, lack of transparency, and zero accountability need to come to an end. to the Ministry of Education and the province of BC, we will never stop advocating for our children. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Lena Penner. And I know we had a lot of fun here. But everybody should be loved and not hated. No matter how they are. No matter how they look, they are always supposed to be loved. And I know this might be a bit crazy, but I've actually never done it before. So this is my first time ever speaking to you all. Yeah. Okay, now I'm done. I'm going to let the other people speak if they want to.
I'm good. I'm here. You know, Lena, again, so brave to get up and say those words. And it's such a basic thing, isn't it? You know, that everybody deserves to be loved, and everybody, no matter who they are, no matter what they're like. And yeah, I really, really appreciate, you know, Lena asked if she could speak, if she could say a few words. And that's the power of self-advocacy. And, you know, I want to say that that is probably, I bet, just the beginning for Lena. And I bet Lena is going to have a lot more to say in the future. And I look forward to hearing it. So I'm going to introduce Anne Whitmore, who has a few words to say. And then when she's done, just so you know, then I'm going to kind of wrap it up. So if we're freezing, maybe like, let's do a little marching. Hope the banner doesn't, you know, blow over on top of all of us. But I'm going to stomp my feet a little bit. And Anne, come on up and say what you need to say. Anne has been, as I mentioned earlier, one of the core volunteers organizing all of this and setting her life aside, essentially, for the last, 2 weeks or so to make things happen. So thank you, Anne.
I don't know how long it's been. It feels like a couple months or something. And that's my husband. We cannot do the things that we do without our support network. Am I right? I'm not usually one for notes, but it's been a really long week. So I wanted to share. My name is Anne. I'm a mom of 4 incredible kids. I might cry because I'm super tired and a little bit emotional. My kids are 5, 7, 9, and almost 28. 2 of them live with a whole bunch of complexities, including ADHD, autism, a rare chromosomal duplication, which comes with a whole bunch of really random things and possibilities, severe speech disorder, coordination, and living with bipolar disorder. It's my second child that I usually talk about that brought me into advocacy, because to tell you the truth, with my first, I just had no clue what was going on. So from birth with my second daughter, I felt like something was off, but no one really believed me. As she grew, my husband and I would keep asking the professionals in our life, and they'd say she's in the range, a little lagging, but in the range. She had a bizarre golem scuttle. She never really crawled. Our doctor said when she wasn't walking, well, we'll worry at 18 months. At 18 months to the exact day, she stood up and walked 41 steps. So she's always kind of like pushed that edge. Anyways, I know we're short on time, so I don't want to share her whole story, but what I wanted to say is that when we finally got her speech assessed, we taught her sign language because that was a thing that you did to like help babies communicate. Well, it turned out that it also helped her mask a severe speech disorder. And when her SLP assessed her, she was actually shocked at how severe her speech disorder was, because she was happy because she could communicate her basic needs. And that was the first time that we realized how much she compensated and came up with creative strategies to manage her disabilities. I'm not even going to go into assessments because we spent a whole hour on that earlier this week, but we did wait 30 months plus circumstances and COVID to finally get an autism assessment, along with an almost but not quite developmental coordination disorder. And I continue to learn about her compensation strategies. Last week I learned that her reflexes aren't mature, so she actually compensates in order to hold her body upright. How much work is she doing every single day? She's 9. I'm finding that out now. When I say kids can't wait, I mean that no child should have to wait so that their caregivers, educators, and medical team know how to better support them. You know, we're looking at currently around, we waited 30 months for our autism assessment. It's around 18 to 24 now. Developmental coordination disorder clinic, I think it's about almost 2 to 3 years. If you go private, you're still on a 6 to 12 month wait list for a lot of these assessments. Kids can't wait. As I dove into advocacy for my daughter, no one warned me what a hard road it would be, that I would run in headfirst into institutions like education and hit wall after wall with a smile. Thanks, Anne, for sharing. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for sharing about your daughter. As I learned about how to be a better advocate for her, I also learned about the embedded ableism that's in our institutions. Have you run into them? I also, as I learned about her and how to support her, I learned about myself, about my own neurodiversity, and how to advocate for myself better. And my dream for my daughter is that she becomes a power self-advocate like you've seen today. Today, we honor International Day of Persons with Disabilities with a focus on how we've managed during COVID. There have been lots of learnings, right? We learned that doctors can have appointments by Zoom or phone, and that you don't always have to go in when it's not necessary. We've learned that flexibility can be had for diverse learners, but we've also learned that there are barriers, like things like equipment and basic internet access to make these things accessible for everybody. We can find support somehow for millions and millions of dollars of COVID funding for community, but we cannot somehow find money to support people with disabilities in everyday, day-to-day life, or to support their professional dreams like Margot talked about in supporting her education. We want accountability, no more parent, volunteer-driven, accountability to hold institutions to using our tax dollars to give equitable access to services. And we need our leaders, both the ones that are elected and the ones who are there, I kid you not, no matter what party's in power, that are driving decisions in the machine. So we need to do the work, and our leaders need to do the work to deconstruct the system of racism, colonialism, and ableism, and all those isms. We need leaders who are going to look inside themselves to do the work and then come back to make the decisions that are going to impact our lives. My daughters are disabled, and they're also exceptional. I'm exceptional. You're exceptional. And it's cold, oh my word. But my friend Clara made the shirt for our friends on the advisory council for complex care site at the new Sunny Hill. I'm enraged slightly. I'm enraged that even in a center that Bobby's on this working group with me, we had to advocate super hard for a ramp. This is a complex center for people of many mobility challenges. I'm enraged that kids have to wait for support in our education system. I'm enraged that families are offered to give their kids into care rather than to support them in their families, in their homes. Parents are concerned about their kids. You know what they're referred to? Hysterical.
I'm
I'm a little
Moderately
hysterical. Aren't you? Hysterical means that I care. Hysterical means that you care. Because for some of us, one change to our day can really mess it up. One change to our educational or our financial supports will really throw a huge wrench into life, and not just for days or weeks, but for a very, very long time. We have a game set up that I invite you to come play after all the speakers. It's called the Game of Life with Disability, and it's to highlight some of the challenges. When education and other ministries are underfunded and undersupported, it hurts everyone. Educators, staff, and students, disabled and not, or those who don't know it yet. My friend Carmen, who couldn't be here because she's caring for her kid, wisely said that when education is underfunded, our children are put into a pipeline of ministry-funded life and poverty. So we say, as we wrap up our 8 days of action, we call for action. Access delayed is access denied. Organizations like BCEdAccess and other partners of this 8-day action are our hard hats. Let's go run at the wall.
Wow, that was awesome. And was like, oh, I just have a few words.
I'm sorry.
You know, no, I mean, it was amazing. It was so good. It was so important. Can I just say how much I love seeing the children and youth who are just roaming around freely and feeling comfortable to do what they want to do? I mean, I just have to talk about that because I'm so struck by when I take my kids somewhere, how afraid I am and concerned I am about what people will think if I let them be their true and authentic selves in public. And thank you to the parents who are cool with that. And thank you for making a space where it's okay for all of us to be our true and authentic selves, move what we need to move, do what we need to do. I mean, I can't say enough about how nice it is to be in a space where we're all welcome and free to be ourselves. I want to thank the participating organizations who signed on to the 8 days of Action for Access without very much information when I reached out because we were kind of building it as we went. So I appreciate the trust. And I want to thank BC People First and Down Syndrome BC and ACT Autism Community Training, the Family Support Institute of BC, Autism BC, Inclusion BC, Girls Club, and, we have Terry Mooring here from the BCTS, who has been really, really helpful in the background in helping me very last minute get some things together. I'm super appreciative. And there are other organizations that are supportive. They just didn't get it together to sign on. That's, this truly is, a pan-disability movement here. And we're never going to fully achieve equitable access until we as disabled people are seen as full persons in our own right, not as charity cases, not subject to or dependent on the goodwill of the general public, until none of us are othered or less valued. Human rights aren't optional. They aren't something that should happen in time. And the government is responsible for human rights. And if they're being violated, they must be held accountable to fix it right away. So we're calling on the BC government to immediately close the loopholes in policy, legislation, and ministerial orders that allow schools to exclude our kids. And we're backing up Indigenous rights holders in demanding government uphold Article 21 of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which says in part that particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of Indigenous elders, women, youth, children, and persons with disabilities. We're calling for recruitment and retention strategies for staff, for teachers, for like standards of practice for education assistants, and to properly fund supports and services in all the ministries supporting disabled children, youth, and adults. We're calling for action on systemic oppression, like ableism, like racism, and more. We're calling for a drastic increase to persons with disabilities funding. We're calling for an end to child poverty. The current rate is 1 in 5 children living in poverty. This is unchanged for more than 20 years. Kids can't wait. We're all tired of waiting. Tired of frameworks. Tired of pilots. Tired of consultation that does nothing to truly engage and empower disabled people and their families. And this rally may be over now, but this is not the end. We're done reacting, just reacting when government acts. And we're done waiting for slow change. And we're going to keep pushing every day for equity and for the principle of nothing about us without us. So there's the game over here, which we really would like you to come and check out because it was a lot of work and it's pretty amazing. And I want to thank again Chantel, Cindy, Anne for your incredible hard work through this and all of the other volunteers who've helped throughout these 8 days of action and today to make things happen. It could not have happened without volunteer power. So thanks everybody for coming.
All right. Hey, everyone. Do I need to hold this near me? Yeah. This should be fine. I hope you...
Well, this is your microphone.
I know.
I can hold it.
Okay. I hope you really enjoyed the rally. I know that you wanted to be here, and we really would have loved to see you, but sometimes this is just the way. I wanted to show you a game that we made, and it's called the Game of Life with Disability. As you jump through the game board, which are hoops. Oh, this is not a good spot to be. Your host through the game is going to read out where you go. So I'm going to read you some of the cards. And the idea is that we want people that don't understand what it's like to either live with disability, to be disabled, or who have a family member or support someone who is, what some of the challenges are. This is really geared towards education, but here's one. You've been waiting 3 years for a psychoeducational assessment to help teachers to support you. In 4th grade, you're at the top of the list, and then a 5th grader transfers in who needs priority for an assessment before middle school. Better luck next year. Penalty. Your family has to find $2,700 for a private assessment. You have a developmental coordination disorder, but the occupational therapist at school only sees kids who need breathing and feeding support. You'll need to go private pay for OT support. Penalty. Your family chooses to spend their vacation money for weekly occupational therapy for you. $6,240 a year. You're a wheelchair user, but your school's playground is inaccessible and has a wood chip surface for the other kids' safety. Your wheelchair gets stuck in the soft surface, so you will watch your friends during recess. Penalty. Your family advocates with the PAC and school district to fund the playground, run fundraisers, and bottle drives. The playground is installed as you graduate to middle school. We want access to play. I forgot to read the bottom. They all have a theme that tie in with our daily theme. Your school says that your emotional outbursts are too much for other kids at school. You can only attend for 1.5 hours a day. Penalty. Your mom is single and has to quit her job and go on assistance so that she can pick you up when the school calls. We want access to rights. You have a low incidence designation, which brings in significant funding to the school district, but they are in a deficit, so have cut support staff. The class EA is supporting you and 3 other kids in the classroom. Penalties, stand to the side and wait for 3 other people to pass you in the game. Your parent is applying for the at-home program for you. To qualify, they need to document what a hard day typically looks like. You don't understand why they seem so sad for weeks after writing it all down. And that's true, that happened for me. Penalty, read the at-home program application form and the 42-page at-home program guide. You've been struggling with depression and suicidal ideation. You had a serious mental health illness designation and school counselor support. Because you stabilized and no longer have a private pay counselor, your designation is pulled along with your school counselor time. Penalty, you now have no mental health supports until it gets bad enough that you're at risk of self-harm, and spend time on a psych hold at the hospital and start all over. Think. And here's the last one. Your school district budget is cut. On Friday, you're told that your full day EA will only be with you for 1 hour a day, starting on Monday. Penalty, your mom has to quit her full-time job to have flexibility to pick you up when the school calls. Your family applies for BC housing, and then you have to move schools and start building supports again. And it's not just that easy to apply for BC housing either. Those of you that know, you know. So anyways, that's what we want to do, to give people exposure to some of the choices, the real choices that families in BC are having to make, particularly around education, because they don't have this adequate support.
Well, that was the game. And I'm just, let me try and end this other sound. I'm managing 2 phones here. There we go. And I am going to sign off from being live here down at the art gallery with all these wonderful folks, as I've got to get back to my kids and returning their vehicles because they lent me their vehicle to get down here. And it's been a wonderful day of action. So Chantel, I'll leave it with you, and
Thank you.
I will see you guys all again.
All right, you take care, Bobby. Say hi from all of us.
I will.
Take care. Oh, what a few hours that was. I'm going to spotlight you now. We have Suzanne Perot as well on the call here today. And we're just going to give a little bit of our thoughts about this. I know I've been messaging on the live Facebook thing for a while. So I think everybody knows what my feelings are. But Suzanne, if you want to let us know, what does this day mean to you?
Wow, you're going to make me cry. I have so many thoughts, Chantel. I don't even know how to synthesize it anymore, because as we've been doing this for a very long time and can't even believe that we're still doing it, right? And the conversation's getting more complex and more difficult. It's not getting easier. And so that becomes a real source of frustration and pain for me, not just for me, but just for our families and our community. And I got notes upon notes, and it's so difficult for me to say, where do I start? The things that I wrestle with is, the things that our government is claiming that they're approaching this with mindfulness. It's huge, the lack of care that has taken place on this, and it's impacting and exasperating our families. We've gotten to a place where we're further categorizing persons with disabilities as a result of this announcement that we're facing. We're seeing this government, this standing government, talk about and use language of social model. And that social model carries so much around it that's heart. It's about person and self-actualization and self-efficacy. And they're using this language when they're standing in house and debate, and it's so far away from it. And so I really struggle with that when we're further categorizing, masking language as social model, for example, when it's still really medical model. And how do we approach that conversation of categorization, right? We're talking about lack of accessibility, parks, buildings, funding, education, and health. We're talking about inappropriate divisive funding models that divide us as a community deliberately. Calling approach to this with the heart built on that social model, it's such a sophisticated guise of manipulation, and it feels like gaslighting. It feels like gaslighting. When I have parents come to me, Chantel, and say, I'm that parent, I say, please don't, please, yes, I say, please don't own it. They're gaslighting you to make you believe you're not an advocate, but you're a problem. You're hysterical.
Yes.
Medical model, right?
You're just making it up. It's not as bad as it seems. It's not as bad as it seems. We're doing it for your safety. We're doing it for you. But are you asking the person you are affecting?
Exactly.
And are you listening and taking it in?
Precisely. And so what happens is we create isolation. We isolate parents. We isolate persons with disabilities. We exasperate loneliness as a result, because it's hard to talk about, because now we don't want to be that squeaky wheel, that parent, whatever it is. We impact our health, our mortality rate, long-term sickness. The impact is so profound. It's so profound, and it's far-reaching. And so I think about, what can we do? How do we create this experience where we don't have to negotiate our presence? Because that's what we're doing today. We're negotiating our presence. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that children have to come forward and negotiate their presence. It's heartbreaking. That's not social model. That's not trauma-informed. That's not mental health. It's not mental wellness. It's actually working against those pieces. And so I messaged you in the background earlier this morning saying, I'm at a boiling point. And when I'm listening to what we share today with all these courageous voices right across the board, I'm going, what can we do? Well, what if our government, who oversees the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Child and Family Services, Minister of Health, does an equity scan across the board, provincially, top down? We can do that. It's in their power. It's in their purview. Do that equity scan, create transparency of who the participants are. What was the query and outcomes? And how do we get the equity profile flowing out of that to come up with meaningful consultative solutions? This isn't a big idea that Suzanne's coming up with. These things get done in corporations all the time. But we're making these decisions like we did in October that literally turned our province upside down, put our families into crisis, and we're not listening. We saw the ministry come out this last week, and you and I discussed this as well. Where's that critical information that the NCFD cited on their quoted outreach to Indigenous families and non-Indigenous families, service providers, professionals, and others? Where's the research on CanChild from McMaster's? And what did the representative from Children and Youth and Auditor General and the Standing Committee on Children have to say? Where are these reports as it impacts this decision? And here we are, we're not stabilizing our community in this journey. We're actually destabilizing it. And that's what I'm left with. And so as I watch today and I listen to Ramona talk about no access to service, devastating. How is this happening? Having a child, her quote hit me. And this is where intersectionality of the conversation becomes critical. Having a child with a disability shouldn't be a ticket to poverty. It should not be a ticket to poverty. There should be pathways and access. When I became a single parent, I survived off a student loan because it was the only thing, the only access to finances I can gain to stabilize my family. So I went to school. I homeschooled one of my kiddos and had two in two different schools. So I was doing 3 different models of education, walking through a separation, with 3 children with diagnosed disabilities, being autistic myself, and not even understanding the fulsome conversation around that. That's just one person, but Ramona stood up. She's another. And I know there's not dozens, there's hundreds that are impacted. That's right.
Thousands.
And so
thousands.
what we're doing is we're destabilizing. We're not stabilizing. And so that's really what we need to look at and go, how do we do this? We need equity scans. We need to be looking at this from a way where we're moving solution forward across the board, because these ministries are starting to enmesh and embed themselves with each other.
Yeah.
Is there wisdom in it? There's probably some wisdom in some of this stuff, but we're missing critical pieces.
We are. It's a mindset that is not there yet at all. They're talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. And it's glaringly obvious to those of us who are impacted by their words. We are impacted. We don't care what the intent was.
That's right.
Of these policies, these changes, whatever. You can intend to do good, but you still created harm.
That's
and
right.
Your impact as an elected official holds more weight than your intent. And we need to make them realize that you can say whatever pretty words you want to say, but if you are impacting somebody negatively because of your policies, because of the discrimination around that, that's the problem. That's
Exactly.
where you have actually gone against the law. You know, there's laws around this, but unfortunately, our system is so bogged down and is so complicated for any parent to actually advocate to go up the chain of command. It's very, very hard for a lot of families to do it, but a lot do. A lot get to the Human Rights Tribunal, but nobody hears about that because they have to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, for those of you who don't know. And so we don't know. We don't know the numbers. We don't know the numbers of all the children who actually really need supports. ADHD, Down syndrome, a lot of the FASD, a lot of them don't have designations at school. So where are they going to get the numbers of all the ADHD kids out there? They don't have a designation. Right. So where are they going to get them from? Are they going to get them from pediatricians? Where are they going to get the information of all the Down syndrome children and what kind of supports they need, and how much that's going to cost? So it's like we're running the show with no real numbers, no real substantial numbers that are public, that are accurate, that are out there that need to be told. And I think if you can't have proper numbers, then you don't really understand what the real problem is.
Well, you're absolutely right, Chantel. Data is what speaks to us. Data is what majority of the time policy is built off of.
Right.
And so it comes there for us, so for a place of it to inform us, right? And to help us. And that's why things like an equity scan, excuse me, for example, is critical, because we're pulling that data. We have now an actual tool to evaluate versus cherry picking individuals who will speak to a cause versus against, or remain neutral and look at the whole, however it may be. And you know, skew the outcome, which is what we witnessed right now, right? You know, when we were at the ledge, was it a week ago? How long ago?
It was 1 week ago.
Right?
Week and a half, actually. Now I think about it.
Right. So we talked about there where it's important that we're in this situation right now. This is a really great situation that we're in, because even though we're in crisis, there's an opportunity to turn around.
Yes.
We have not pulled into the train station yet to park it. There's an opportunity to turn around, and we're sitting in this situation where we can do that and look at the conversation of how do we build understanding. For example, doing the equity scan, building and informing and evaluating evidence-based information, and including the lived experience of families speaking into mental health inequities, not equity, inequities. I don't want that to be confused. And to better understand how to eliminate these inequities, because that's really what the conversation is about. How do we eliminate the inequities? How do we translate How do we communicate this evidence in a timely, culturally appropriate manner to bring understanding to the strongest data that we can pull forward? We're rushing. We don't need to rush. When we rush relationships, we're always heated. Don't rush. Take your time, feel it out. We're rushing a relationship right now in this transition model that we haven't weighed and measured it yet and evaluated what the supports can look like and what the potential outcomes can be regarding health equity, because all of this is around health equity.
So I have to disagree a little bit with you on there, Suzanne, but not in a bad way. I think that we've been dancing around this issue and collaborating or discussing with them for quite a few years now. Like they did have the what was it called? The working group from last year that's been meeting with the ministry about this. They had engaged families through like a very barrier creating system to okay, so it's called an advisory committee or something like that. I can't remember what it was called.
There was an advisory committee.
Exactly.
Created.
It was really hard to actually what do you call it? Apply for that position, because I actually applied for that position and it was extremely difficult. You know, I have ADHD, so a lot of the steps were very, very complicated. So that was very limiting to begin with. And then they brought these families in and stuff like that, and then didn't listen to them.
That's not collaboration, though.
That's not collaboration. We've been doing this hard work for years now, trying to create this relationship. And it feels like they're like, oh, yeah, you can come in. But then they shut the door.
So you're not really disagreeing with me. You're punctuating a point that the communication isn't there. It's being driven, right? They're driving the communication, but they're not allowing that opportunity for the ebb and flow in that relationship to occur, to really get targeted on health equity and what does that mean for us in the community of persons with disabilities. And so where does the learning come from? We need to be doing that real time, learning to do that engagement and ensure that there's effective, equitable evaluation, right? Equitable means we're pulling it all in from and then transparency, but all the layers of these partner groups. So ADHD community, the FASD, dyslexia, right? The autistic community and so on and so forth. We have multiple communities that need their voices heard, that come together for the same purpose, support. And on that conversation of intersectionality, we need to target it because we're losing families, is what we're doing. When we lose family, we impact community. When we impact community, we impact the workplace. When we impact the workplace, we impact the economy. Like it's just this debilitating ripple effect.
It is a ripple effect if you pay now or pay later.
That's right. That's right. And as, again, Ramona said, having a child, even though this is not just about children, but this is where it starts, having a child with disabilities should not be a ticket to poverty. All means all.
Exactly that. All means all. All means all. Thank you, Suzanne, for coming on and decompressing with me, actually, because it's just so like, I wanted to be there physically because we have these like strong emotions about it. And I was unable to be there. I know many people were not able to be there. They've been messaging, texting, posting about it. Thank you all for coming online, though. Thank you all for coming online and being here with us. We're trying to make this as accessible as possible. And I hope that this ripple effect goes out to everybody and they understand that they need to make the world now more accessible as well. Everybody has a role to play in making accessibility. Every single person has a role in creating an inclusive environment. And I don't mean inclusion like, oh, let's say the word. No. It's accessibility here, where you got to open the door here and let us in. And then we need to create the environment together. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to have 2 videos that I hope you get to watch with us. One of them, if I can get it going, I really hope you can watch, because it's a video that we got created by an amazing producer, Neil, that is kind of like our little BCEdAccess video. So hopefully you get to watch that and watch our amazing people from the Anti-Ableism Committee talk about ableism. Because that's underlying it all, right? That's embedded in our systems. Our systems were created with ableism in mind. They were not created at the beginning with people with disabilities in mind or neurodivergent. So thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. Now let me see if I can do this right.
Chantal, you'll have to go back and reshare with the sound clicked at the bottom, optimized for audio or something.
Sorry, folks, I'm just trying to figure this out here. So let's see here. I'm going to go.
In an ideal world, a child or youth would be able to walk into their school and immediately feel like they belong. BCEdAccess is an organization of parents and guardians of children with disabilities and complex learning needs, and we advocate for equitable access to education for everyone.
Our dream for students in BC schools is that regardless of who they are, what demographic they fall into, they are going to leave their house in the morning, go to their neighborhood school, get exactly what they need to have the best education and outcome in life.
The reason that the organization started was because there needed to be a place for parents to have conversations about what was happening to their kids in schools.
I was advocating for my daughter in the school system, really fighting for her to be able to stay in school and have the appropriate supports she needed. BCEdAccess provided me personally not just the knowledge I needed, it gave me the emotional support. I could not have gotten my daughter through school without BCEdAccess.
We're seeing our work actually have impact on policy, not just provincially and in the districts, but also federally. We're starting to see some change. But on the smaller scale, and I think this is where I'm most proud of our work, we see the impact on individual children and their families.
I think it's really important that disabled youth have this resource because there's no map. When you're a disabled student, you're just kind of put in this school system that's not really made for you, and you're expected to just make it work. And if there's an issue, no one tells you, like, here's where to go. So I think having an organization that's a safe place that you can turn to is just amazing.
As we grow, it's very important that we become more diverse and more representative of the people we serve.
People don't live in like kind of a bubble. Like most disabled people have another intersecting identity, and I think even in like the disability community, it can be hard to feel welcome if your other identities aren't also welcomed.
Our work is always very intersectional. We know that if we can do the work and have the conversations to make sure that our kids with complex medical issues and disabilities are safe and reaching their full potential, that it ultimately benefits all groups.
We have a really big impact, both individually and systemically. And to be able to make bigger change, it's really important that we have stable funding.
A donation to BCEdAccess is going to help us with that work, and it goes a long way to ensuring that every single student in this province gets an education.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. We are done for the day, and I so appreciate you all for coming and sharing this amazing day with us. And now I urge you to go forth and share the word, because we need to make some noise. We need change. All means all. Disability rights are human rights. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.